We are live and welcome to Connection with Spirit. I'm Deborah Epstein and this is my friend.
Larissa.
And we are going to be having an interesting conversation today. And I feel like the first thing I want to throw out there and ask, and take your time and think about this. If you know right away and you want to throw it into the chat, like please feel free to throw anything into the chat at any time. And we'll take a look at your answers and respond to them. But I'd like us to all think about what is the world that we want to live in? What does that look like? How do you want to experience it? What, what is the world you want to live in? And, that's kind of where I want to start here. Because one of my thoughts about that is that I'm suspicious that we all pretty much want the same thing. And I feel like what's happening, what's playing out in the media is that we're attached to the how are we going to create it and who's going to create it for us. And this person over here is, I believe that they're going to create it for me in this way. And this person is saying, I want to create it in that way. And there's just a divergence in the how. But then I also, as conscious creators and leaders, that we are responsible for how we create, how we be in the world. We are the creators collectively of the world that we live in. And yes, we need leaders. And yes, we're also responsible creators of the world that we live in. So that's my little soapbox.
Well, and before we jumped on the live, we were discussing and it really made me, you know, we often, if we're out in the public, get put on a pedestal and held to a different standard. And so if you say or do anything wrong, then you're judged harshly for that. And if we were all holding ourselves to the same standard, right? How we want to show up in the world, how we want the world to be,
Mhm.
that would change things. Like, first of all, why do we put these people on a pedestal? And second of all, then what is it about that makes them different? That they have a different standard.
Mhm.
And I do think it comes from, you know, I think of when I was a child and you had to behave a certain way, and like celebrities and things had to be, they would marry off people if they were misbehaving, they would hide everything, that sort of thing. And as we want more authenticity, we're still not leaving room for differences and, I don't know, mistakes, for lack of a better word, but that's not really it either. It's like sometimes we just
Mhm.
have a different opinion, those sort of things. But yes, how do we want to show up in the world to create the world that we want to live in
Mhm.
individually?
Individually and in a way of unity. And
Mhm.
unity is not homogeny. And that's some of the scary stuff that I see out there, that unity within, like when you look out at nature, there's diversity that creates a harmony and a unity in nature. But we are thinkers, and we also come from a very strong belief system around separate, right? We're individuals interwoven together, united, diverse, and separate at the same time.
Mhm.
If you started thinking about ourselves as like fractals of a mirror or fractals of a gem, we each have a different perspective that we're living as a unity, right? So if we're that intimately connected, but what we've learned how to do is further separate. We separate into groups. Like you are saying, like if you make a mistake, like, oh my gosh, we're going to vilify you, and now you're kicked out of the club, right? Because you said the wrong thing, or you wore the wrong thing, or you were hanging out with the wrong person, because our side does this,
Mhm.
right? Our group does this, right? And it's how do we move past that? How do we start to create unity and diversity at the same time? We talk about equity as, a thing too. That's an interesting conversation altogether, right? What do we call equal, and how do we decide what that is, and how do we make that happen, as a culture?
Yeah. And it is equal what we want. Do we all need the same thing?
Yeah,
Right? So
great
is that,
question. Yeah.
I would say no, we don't all need the same thing. So is equal the end game or the start? Right? Do
Hmm.
we all start on a level playing field? But then if you have different obstacles to go through, is it equal? Or do you all have the chance to end up at the same place? Is that equal? Or is it
Hmm.
the game you play in between?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because what it makes me think of, I love to go to nature, right? And you look at all the variety of trees we have, trees, bushes, plants, all that kind of stuff. If they were thinking, if they had thoughts like we had thoughts, right? They're
Mhm.
alive and they have consciousness and they have an intelligence, but they don't have what we have, is that idea that they're separate, right? And working off of that knowledge. What would it be like if they did? What would nature be like if they were always vying for who's better and who's more important, and I'm not getting enough or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
They'd be eating themselves alive like we are.
I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in that world.
Yes.
Because
That's,
they would have probably come after us a long time ago. Like,
oh yeah,
these freaking humans, look what they're trying to do to our world.
we're gonna take them out. I
We're
mean,
gonna
every
take
so
them out.
often they take a stand, but
Yeah.
we take it so personally. If
Hmm.
we actually had them fighting against us, I think we would lose. I think we would.
Yeah. Well, there is a movie by M. Night Shyamalan, however you say its name, that it is the trees start emitting like a poisonous gas and kills off a lot of population in the whole movie. It's Mark Wahlberg's in it, and he's basically running for his life to stay away from the trees that are like emitting this poisonous gas, because it's like it came down to, it's either us, nature, or you guys, and you guys aren't going to live without us anyway, so it's you guys. I can't think of the name of the movie right now, but it was an interesting take on a kind of like a horror suspense movie.
Hmm. I don't watch a lot of his, but if somebody knows the name of that movie, I'd be curious because
Sh
it's kind of
Shyamalan. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks,
Shyamalan.
Zoe.
That
But
helps.
yeah, yeah, he does some really interesting work for sure, and really looks at things differently. Yeah, yeah, and but coming back to humans and how we treat one another, because we could go down a whole rabbit hole with the nature versus human,
Yeah.
which I mean is eventually going to win anyway. So like, who are we kidding? We're not going to
Hmm.
beat that one. But for right now, if we want to create a world that we can live in without fear of our lives,
Hmm.
I was watching. There's an artist I follow, and she lives in Israel, and she was just, I'm safe, but I just wanted to like share, I'm safe, but there's bombs going off around, and just coming from a place of peace and things, and I'm like, yeah, these are the things that are happening, and we distance ourselves from it, right?
Hmm.
Oh, there's a war over there, and we don't think about it because it's over there. But
Hmm.
really, it's everywhere because it's a collective energy. And so if we if we are not, I don't want to say paying attention, but it kind of is. If we're not feeling into that collective energy, it's still going on, but we're just contributing to it if we're not helping
Hmm.
change it. And so it's
Yeah.
that ripple effect that we can do. And we were talking before we got on about kindness and being kind to self and being kind to others, and sort of the differences that allow us to have that ripple. And the more we can do that, because we can't rely on our governments or our leaders to do it. They're
Hmm.
coming from a different energy. And so we as people have to we have to do it. So it's
Hmm.
like the person next to you, the person you're talking to. It doesn't have to be friends, the person in the grocery store. Just be kind, right?
Hmm.
And it all ripples out. And stop being so influenced. And I know that's difficult, but think for yourself. Stop being
Hmm.
so influenced by other uh, leaders, for lack of a better word. I don't know that they're leaders, but the
Hmm.
people who run our
Who are in
country.
those leadership positions, we'll say it that way.
That's it. That's it. Yes.
Leadership positions.
And thank you, Zoe. The movie is The Happening,
The
so
happening. Yeah.
yeah, check that out.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree about the energetics that you're talking about on this too. And if you go like just in your day-to-day relationship with yourself, where am I doing battle? So it doesn't mean that it's not the literal like I'm contributing to it because I have bad thoughts. That's part of it, right? Or I'm attached to the negative, like when somebody posts something, I'm going to say it, I'm going to try and stay generic. Somebody posts something that's very inflammatory, and there's levels of attachment, right? There's the looking and going, the mild annoyance, right? Then there's like oh my gosh, like I can't believe this person actually thinks this and they're friends of mine on Facebook. Oh, right. So,
Mhm.
and then there's the attachment to the point where I got to set this person straight because the way I see it is better or different, and it matters more than the way they see it. And then there's, the outright like fanatical attachment where, you're
Threatening
just going
lives and
back and
all of that.
forth. Yeah, that's all battle,
Hmm.
right? So it really is up on the planet right now. It's like it's all expressions of an energy and like different, like when you think country, right? And then city, and then community, and then individual. You're a collection of cells, you're a community of cells, right? So within you, you're a community. And so are you battling inside yourself? And imagine, I just got chills on this because I know they've done research about this. Imagine if just for an hour you could gather with yourself and 10 other people and just quell whatever the battle is in yourself. Like just set the armor down, set the hammer down, set the guns down, set whatever down, and just be in peace for an hour. That they say, like, I forget the equation. I could look it up in one of my books. Maybe somebody out there knows it, just like someone knew the happening. That there's an equation for the number of people that come together in a like energy and how much that affects the whole energy.
Hmm.
So we have so much power that we're just not tapping into because we're also, I think, really I want to say trapped because we're not trapped, but we're distracted by our day-to-day lives, the making the money, the paying the bills, the making the dinner, the picking up the kids from school, all of that kind of stuff. And it's almost like I think that's part of the design to keep us so distracted from ourselves that we do need to put our power somewhere else
Hmm.
instead of within.
If we keep people scrambling, they're going to be so busy doing that, they're not going to do anything else, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
And that collective energy. My first thought was that one Christmas, I think it was World War II, when they all stopped for peace for that one Christmas, and they were playing football together, and they were, doing all of those things. But then I think of Joe Dispenza and his meditations when he brings people
Hmm.
from around the globe, and they've measured that energy. They've
Yeah.
measured that energy when they're meditating together,
Hmm.
right? And like that collective energy is like truth comes from it. It just like it's so amazing. And knowing that connection, like we now even science is on board with it. We've known it, but now even science is on board, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. But some people need that, some people need to hear like if, someone they respect is saying that, then it must be true. But even that, like if you're really attached to a certain way of thinking or a certain way of being, it doesn't matter what scientist says
Oh,
about
yes,
anything,
they've proven
you
that
know.
time and time again over the last few years. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the scientists say.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was on my trip. I just drove across the country from Rhode Island back to Sedona, and I was listening to Greg Braden. I'll look up the title while I'm talking. Um, and he was talking about belief systems and the power that how we not throw, but move our energy through a belief system, and that how even within scientific circles, like the theory of evolution, like he talked about how Darwin himself admitted there was flaws in his theory. Like he said himself that there was a lot of flaws in his theory, things that he couldn't account for. And where the science is with human beings versus like that in the chain of connection with all other beings on the planet, that there seems to be a point in human history where we just appeared. We just appeared. Now he doesn't go into what he thinks made that happen,
Mhm.
but there's science and data on that. But that is inflammatory too, because like this is the data. We're not telling you what to think. We're just telling you this is what we found. And it starts a huge battle over religious groups, scientific groups, and people who believe, very wholeheartedly that we all evolved from, simple cells together,
Mhm.
that we are just many expressions of different cells. And it could be yes and it could be all of that, you know,
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
with divine intervention, however you want to call that, or whatever you think. I mean, there's lots of theories about it, but the thing is we don't know for certain, right? We don't know for certain, and everything is story. I guess that's what I'm kind of coming around to, is that we all tell stories based on the experience we have living on this planet as human beings, and our stories are all very different.
And
Not
what
one,
if
what if?
we were open to there being other stories and not being so locked into the one and only way?
Mm-hmm.
Just a simple thing. You were talking about your trip home and this was before we got on live. You were talking about your trip home and the events that happened. And your story could have been it was a disaster and it was the, worst trip ever and blah, blah, blah. And instead you chose, oh, well, most likely it was trying to, the universe was protecting me and I was not supposed to be somewhere. So that was a choice that you made
Mm-hmm.
that we can make at every turn, right? Like every time we have a thought, we make a choice. And
Yeah.
so, what are we choosing to think? And what are we choosing to be open to?
Right. Because that also ripples out, right? And you gave me chills when you reflected me back to me like that, because I'm like, yeah, but that's how I see that. That is how I see the world. That, just so you guys know, I blew a tire on the road, but like I didn't go like, oh my God, I blew a tire. It was the most horrible thing ever. I mean, yes, I could have said that, and it did kind of suck, but I looked at I always look for the blessing. What's the blessing in this? The blessing is I was in like the far left lane. I had 3 lanes to go as my tires going pull, 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 with all this truck traffic around me. And I easily made it over to the other side. And then there was a rest stop right there. So it was easy to change the tire. And I was like, thank you. This is awesome. You know,
Mm,
so it's like that, even though this kind of sucks, like there's a lot of good in that. And then I was like walking around when my husband was changing the tire, and I was walking the dog, and I'm like, well, what's the meaning of this? Like, what am I supposed to meet somebody? Am I supposed to blah, blah, blah? And then I'm like, what if it's just, yeah, what if it's just happened because it happened? And, it's either maybe it stopped someone else from having an accident, or stopped me from getting into a worse accident, or who knows what it is.
yeah.
But like, yeah, it's total choice.
Yeah.
It's total choice. And like that's where our power lies and how we tell the story for ourselves, because then that does ripple out when you tell the story to someone else or, you know, whatever. But you know, we're human. We have days, right? Where like everything sucks.
Yes.
And I
And
can't even find a blessing in this.
I talk about that a lot in my community. You know, as humans, we judge, right? It's a safety mechanism that we have, that we judge. And but I say, then what's the next moment? Right? So we're human, we're going to judge. But then what's the next moment? What do you do with that? Do
Hmm.
you stay in that judgment? Or do
Hmm.
you stop and reflect on what's actually going on, or what maybe could be going on, or the fact that you don't have all the information? And
Hmm.
moving from that sort of that energy, as opposed to judging and staying there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, totally. And that, like, being very honest, I'm very judgmental. It's something I work with. It's an archetype that I have in my lexicon of archetypes.
Mhm.
I also have a very strong mother archetype, you know, and there's a shadow and a shadow side and a light side to everything, because the judge can be of service to me, you know, because it can help keep me safe. But then also when I'm in the shadow side of it, like, yeah, it gets kind of ugly. And I'm like, what? And then I catch myself like, man, like, what were you just thinking about that person? Like that goes out as energy, right?
Mhm.
And I don't beat myself up, but I'm like, what just got triggered, right?
Mhm.
And that's just doing the inner work, right? And I don't ever go out and like, you know, you need to blah, 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 blah. You know, it's more internal. And then how badly am I judging myself? You know, when I'm looking in the mirror, what am I picking on about myself? You know, and that goes back to self-kindness, right? It kind of all comes back to kindness.
Yeah. Before we got on, I had queried this because was doing some journaling on it this week about, you know, if everyone could just be kind. And then I was like, okay, but then it goes too far, because then we don't stand up for ourselves. Okay, well, maybe we just need to be kind to self. And then I was like, okay, but wait, because then if some people think they're being kind to themselves, they could be not being kind to somebody else. And so I was like in this like swirl. And then Debbie stepped in and went, can you remember what you told me? Because it was like,
I knew you
yes,
were going to say
exactly
that.
that.
Yeah, because I think, well, this is what I'm going to say now. Whatever I said then was then. And
I'll
what I'm
tell you
going
if
to,
it's close.
yeah, what I'm going to say now is that like we can't make other people be kind to themselves. And
Mhm.
that in sometimes in being kind to yourself, it may cause a problem for somebody else. And that I think we need to learn. It's so funny because I just see my husband right now because he's very sweet and he's also very codependent. And, you know, when he's learning to stand up for himself and standing up for himself, like a value thing, how much am I worth? How much can I charge for a certain service? And not just to give his service away because he doesn't want someone to not like him or make someone upset. And like the kindest thing he can do is charge what he's worth for the service that he's providing, because it supports him. He can't be giving away services for nothing, because how is he going to keep doing it? He needs to be able to eat, he needs to have a place to sleep, he needs clothes to wear, you know, and beyond the basics, right? So when, you know, this is such an amazing topic too, like where you can take this
Mhm.
and, you know, what does kindness to yourself look like, you know, and how we are kind of taught to think about the other person before we think about ourselves, and that's kindness. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I think what you were stuck in the loop of a program. Be a nice girl. Just be a nice girl, okay? Just be a nice girl. And even though you don't want to, you don't give that person your power. Even though you don't want to give that person your power because you're a nice girl. And we all have that.
Oh, we absolutely have that. And
Yeah.
then, you know, and then we see the other side where it swings the other way, and it's like, we're not going to be nice to anyone. We're going to it's all our way, and that, you know, that's it. And it's like, okay, wait a second. Like, are you truly happy? And this comes back to the be kind to yourself. Are you truly happy with yourself in your life if you're being miserable to other people, to yourself? are you truly happy and being kind to yourself?
Hmm.
And I do believe that the answer would be no.
Yeah. And kind of going back to what started this conversation, this live, when we were talking last week about like, I have a lot of friends that I follow on Facebook, and there was just so much infighting from certain posts about, you know, I'm for this guy or I'm for this person, and like just all of the just derogatory stuff. And I was like, I gotta turn this stuff off. And it's like, you know, I don't want to engage in it to that, because it's like, man, I gotta be kind to myself here for a second. I don't need to be in this energy, but let me send energy to it. But we started talking about that, and that's kind of what got us on this topic. And I believe it's a very big topic, and it does come down to kindness to yourself and how you be in the world, and how angry we are at certain things, like certain rights that we feel that are being taken away from us. It does stir us up. But like, is there another way we can do this where we're not causing further harm or damaging friendships? Like there was one exchange that I read between two friends of mine, one of whom has a child that is going through a gender transition. And so she is experiencing that with her child, in a way that this other person can't ever understand. And so saying that it's wrong, or her experience is wrong, or how her child feels is wrong, that's wrong to
Mm-hmm.
me. That's wrong to me, because I can never step in and tell you how you are living your life is not right, because I just don't believe it's right for me.
And that's what we're seeing, right?
Hmm.
And I do really try to come from that place of you do you unless you're causing harm, right? You do you
Yeah.
unless you're causing harm.
Yep.
And there are some issues around human rights that do cause me harm
Hmm.
as a woman, as a gay woman,
Hmm.
like I am white, so I do have that on my side. But I'm overweight, so that's another one. There's so many different things that if you have no idea, you have this story that, as we going back to what we were talking about before, you have this story of what is right, but you don't have that lived experience. So how do you know what is,
Yeah.
right?
And how do you legislate for something like that? What are you basing it on? Because you're going to, by telling a whole society that this is how it should be, when we're so diverse, and we're actually, like, my belief is that we're here as souls having many different experiences for our soul's growth. And what if that is someone's soul's growth in that experience?
Mm-hmm.
Or, this is your experience, how you are in this personality, in this lifetime, for this moment of history. You chose it all,
Mm-hmm.
chose the experience. And within that, then you're in the drama of it, you're in the play of it, and, you know, how do you legislate for something like that? How do you?
With a hammer. That's what they do.
Yeah.
But
Without walking, like, well, yeah, that's how we've got some good, yeah,
yeah, I
activity
was
here. I
just
just saw.
there's some
Yeah.
comments going on here, and going back to, is it Iona? Accepting ourselves as we are and willing to improve. Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
And Celtic peasant Zoe, I really think we all need to think, to be accepting, to be compassionate, to live with integrity, and not to be held back by bullies. I think it's important to take a stand, but not in a way to hurt.
Hmm.
And then also others,
Others, yeah. The
yeah, not to
continuation,
hurt
yeah.
others, but just not to be in the background, which is just as bad, exactly as we are who we are.
Yeah.
And yes, that's,
Oh, more.
oh,
We
and
need to evolve, not devolve. Just take a stand and do what we can do. And Charlotte Seeger says, I agree. Here for soul's growth. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, not standing in the background. That's something that I also like, is a thing for me. And, through the leadership training, I witnessed myself like in the middle, like they have you do all these kind of group exercises, and there's like 60 or 70 people in the room, and we had to come upon like one thing to agree on. And this was like in the morning session. The night before, we were like doing this thing where everybody was in this collective. It was like juicy energy. It wasn't like we're getting along. We were like in love with each other. Like it was just an amazing experience. And then the next day, we're like, they're fisticuffing it over like stupid issues. And I was just sitting there with like, I was just sitting there like, oh, I knew what I want to say. Oh, I want to say something, but I like sitting back, and then somebody saw me doing it and they handed me the microphone. So it was like, okay, I have the mic in my hands, time to stand up. And
Mhm.
what I said was I reminded them of how we were so connected and so in love, and like what's at issue here? What's going on? Like, can we find ourselves back to this place of love and come to a decision that works for all of us without calling each other names and fighting? And it just was like silence in the room. And I was like, wow, they didn't kill me for that. It was like it actually was the thing that shifted it. So what I learned through that is that like yes, they're fighting, but putting something out there that is more from a place of love, like the world I want to live in, coming from that place as the energy that I want to create. That's the goal, the world I want to live in. And how do I act and be in that world I want to live in? Because that's how we create it in the now. And we, a lot of us don't think about that
So that coming
impact.
from that energy of how do I want to be in the world as
Hmm.
opposed to this way or that way,
Hmm.
right? What's the energy? What is the collective that I want to be a part of versus it has to be this way
Hmm.
because that's what I know.
Hmm.
And every time we make that decision to, stand so strong in something, it it's like there's always other sides, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I have things that I absolutely, and I could list off some of them. I am very clear on some things that I take a stand on. However, if I'm having a conversation with a person who takes that stand and is willing to talk,
Hmm.
I would gladly listen in to like let's have a conversation about this, and you might change my mind on some of it.
Hmm. Hmm. Or give me another perspective,
Yeah,
right? Like tell me why that you look at it this way.
yeah.
How are you seeing? Because that's the whole idea of where we have multiple perspectives, right? How many
Mm.
80 billion people on the planet, 80 billion different perspectives. Yeah, like that's mind blowing when you think about it. I don't even know if that's the right
No,
number, but
8 billion, 8
8
billion.
billion, 8
Yeah.
billion. I'm making,
It's
yeah,
still a ridiculous number,
it's,
but
yeah,
we,
it's
we topped
ridiculous.
8
Yeah.
billion now. So yeah.
8 billion. Okay. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, 80 billion, 8 billion is all the same to me, right?
That's
Oh,
channel.
yeah, that's a lot more.
Yes. Oh, and then yeah. Um so see,
Nonviolent
that is
communication.
awesome. There
Yeah.
were proof right there that it's better to take that stand. And then
Yeah.
Carol says nonviolent communication.
That's a
You
great
can't lose
program,
anything
by
really.
the way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot lose anything, really. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you really can't lose anything,
Mhm.
because we're losing by not saying anything, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
not saying something in that confrontational, it has to be my way kind of way, but is in what do we actually want here?
Yeah.
What are we going for here?
Yeah. And there's a difference between speaking from your button just got pushed. Maybe it's not time to take a stand when you're like triggered, right?
Hmm.
So maybe I'm just going to sit back and listen right now and wait for the
Trying to decide
person
why I'm triggered.
yeah, wait for the person to finish. And then, you know, let's let's take the stand that we feel like we need to take. But that's being judicious with, the judge archetype, right? That's being judicious with when is the right time to take the stand? When am I being, am I creating more of the same battle? Or am I rising above? Am I coming from the new earth energy that, I don't know if you guys are experiencing this, but I just had to take a moment and say, like, wowza, the energy of the last couple of weeks is super powerful, super potent. Like, I don't know if you're experiencing it, like just things are just
We were
moving
talking
way
about
too
that a few
fast.
weeks ago,
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about it, and that, and the shift that has happened that is so powerful. And there's a positive charge to it. Like, it doesn't feel, I know there's a lot of polarity and there's a lot of war, there's all of that still going on, but there's this positive charge to the energy that
Hmm.
is shifting. And yeah, very much so can feel that,
Yeah.
and the changes that are happening.
Yeah, like it's so much easier, like what I'm noticing too. And yes, I live in Sedona, so the energy is a little bit more potent here because and just coming back.
Alberta, trust me, it's not a potency thing. It's like, so I can feel it.
Yeah.
Anyone can.
Well, Sedona does have
Mm.
vortex energy and it
Oh
does
yeah,
amplify.
absolutely.
It does amplify, but when just being away for the month that I was away and then coming back, I was like, whoa. Like that's the communication. The veil is a lot thinner, it's thinner everywhere, but it just like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of blew me away. It's becoming easier and easier to have like conversations with spirits and guides and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's another reason too, like I'm going to say right now, why you need to be grounded in who you are with your own integrity. Like someone up here wrote this about having integrity and kindness and all that. You need to have that when you're having connections with different spirits, because it's not about giving your power away to an entity or force outside of yourself. We are equal to everything in the universe. We're different though. That's it. We're in different form. We're actually like we're in the form of spirit in matter, which allows us to have communication with spiritual realms as well as being in this three-dimensional reality that we're all kind of, I want to say we're having the same illusion, but
As you were saying
yeah.
that, what popped into my mind is that's the very clear difference between religion and spirituality,
Hmm.
right? Is that religion is outside of you and spirituality is inside. And so
Hmm.
it's like going in, talking to spirit yourself, being, grounded in that and being in touch with the energy of
Hmm.
everything, even if you don't recognize it, but it's allowing yourself to sit with it, and not relying on somebody else to tell you how it should be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are like amazing
And
too.
faster than I can read them, so I'm just going to catch us up here.
Yeah.
I think we stopped here. What do you want your world to be? What is your visions? And then Zoe says, super powerful, totally keeping involved. Even though I'm a Canadian, because whatever happens down there happens to us. It's so important. It's so true. And yes,
Sorry.
to be right in it is different. I'm totally charged, but I know that if I were there, I would be charged.
Mhm.
I got charged enough that I sure would be volunteering up here if I was able to. Right now. And Iona, when I remember, I ask, what would love do? Yes,
I love that.
love that.
Yeah, that's
And looking at
beautiful.
nature, it takes all our differences to make our world as perfect as nature is, and
Hmm.
perfectly imperfect when you look at nature, right? It doesn't get put in a box like we're expected to be.
Yeah, well, perfect is a judgment, right?
Yeah,
Like we were saying, like the trees don't go like, oh, you got your leaf is all curled up. Yeah.
gonna happen. And
Okay.
yes, there are pastors trying to make that point right now.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of that too,
Yeah.
where a lot of pastors at churches are trying to make a difference and shifting into that more into spirituality.
Hmm.
And what's SSD is when opposing opinions tear
Sad.
apart. Oh, sad, I think.
Hmm.
When opposing opinions tear apart a family. I put a video on my Facebook page that illuminated the political stance of the presidential candidates and got a backlash from my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And exactly, yes. And that's it too. And we do have ideas around how we want our politics to be because they do influence how we live our lives.
Hmm.
and then it's like, but are we playing into, the issues? But then we need to speak up, right? We need
Mm-hmm.
to speak up if things are, so there's this really fine line of how do we, and maybe it's not so fine, maybe it's just that we haven't been taught of how to come at it from this place of, love,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we want to be collectively as opposed to blaming and, it's this or that. It's
Mm-hmm.
as a collective, we've made these decisions, right? We're at war everywhere because we're at war somewhere.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
that collective energy, we have to decide how we move so that we can ripple it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it's in one, it's in the all. It's in all of us. And yeah, I'm trying to come back to a thought I had while you were talking. I'm like 100%. It's 100% in agreement. Oh yeah, and here it came. It was also the fact that there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear being thrown about. Like what, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of fear. But I wonder if the anger is coming from a place of fear. Like what are you afraid of, And if that's the difference between coming from fear and coming from love when you speak, right? It's like, yeah, I like if I think about certain alternatives, if these things happen, well, shit, that's a bit scary. But at the same time, I have to, for me, keep my focus on what I want to create in the world. It's the vision I have for myself, and the vision that I want to live in with a world that is diverse. That, yeah, we're going to have conflicts because we're going to have times where we get headstrong and we want it this way, but that we can resolve our conflict without name calling, without making people wrong, without out and out blowing somebody up, that we can learn how to negotiate points and maybe start to see different perspectives. I think asking for perfection in like, some sort of weird utopia where everybody's, flowers, roses, and, lollipops, rainbows, and whatever, is like, yeah, well, why did we come here?
Mhm.
We had that in the spirit realm, right? There's realms of spirit where there's not conflict like this, we came here to have these experiences as souls,
Mhm.
but we don't have to like annihilate each other having them. That's the too far to the other extreme, right?
And being all, you know, I mean, coming from a place of love doesn't mean nothing goes wrong. It doesn't mean that people don't get hurt because, we are here for full experiences.
Hmm.
It just means we're not out to destroy each other on purpose,
Hmm.
which is a completely different thing. Do you want to catch us up on these? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Vision is the key. Oh, let's see. Because we are in conflict with ourselves. Let's see. Well, not all. Let's see. I got to go back up. Sorry. Okay, let's see. Our governing parties are working to tear us apart from uh, both in the States and in Alberta. Well,
Yep.
not all of our governing parties. We know who they are. Yes, because we're at conflict within ourselves. Yeah. Doom, gloom, fear, and anger. Absolutely. For a lot of people, the anger is coming from fear. Yeah, I agree. Vision is key. Exactly, Deborah. That is the thing. That is how we have to be exactly without being a 4-year-old. Keeping sovereign, says Carol. And utopia would be just to be allowed to be who we are. Yeah, right? To
Yeah.
have the freedom to say what we believe, not perfection. Yeah. And I have to ask, like, do we have the freedom to say what we believe? Do we?
I mean,
Yeah. What would happen?
we can say what we believe. Absolutely. We have the freedom to say it. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean there's no repercussions.
Right.
It's the same as, people say, well, I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You just
Yeah.
may not like the consequences of that choice.
Yeah. But freedom versus what? Versus being locked up versus being killed versus, you know,
What
because
is
like,
freedom then, right?
yeah, what is freedom? Yeah. Because I feel like I'm free to say what I want to say,
I do
but
too.
but I'm being at the same time being responsible with how I say it. Maybe if I'm one-to-one with someone, I might say it a little differently, although I'm pretty honest. I'm pretty honest. I'm not going to be taking sides and being inflammatory. I actually am an independent in the party system here. I'm an
Mhm.
independent, and I am that way for a reason, because I like to sit back and really look at all the sides before stepping forward with a choice. I want to take in the information. I don't want to just be in this party and just vote because this is what the party's doing. you
Mhm.
know so that's kind of how I operate. That's how I operate in the world. And
Mhm.
yeah, so
I
I feel
try.
like,
I
well, I
try.
have a freedom to do that. Yeah. you
We don't
know
really have. I mean, I guess we do kind of have independent here. I'm in Canada versus the States.
hmm
I would consider myself, well, I support NDP. I'm going to just say that publicly.
hmm
However, I'm not a fan of our new leader. We just got a
hmm
new leader on the NDP, NDP
Blah, blah, blah,
party.
blah.
And so I have to really look at, am I still, is it the full party I'm behind, or who's going to lead that party? Right? Because that really makes a difference in who I vote for. And I want to look at the whole thing. I'm not just like, I'm NDP, I support NDP, and that's it. I
Uh-huh.
need to look at more. I need to look at more. So,
hmm
I do vote because I don't think I have a right to bitch if I don't vote. And I do bitch about our politics. I live in Alberta. So, there's that. Mostly privately.
But yeah, responsibly, there's a time
Yeah.
and place for that, right? You're not going to do that here,
But I
right?
also want to
Yeah.
take a stand about things that I believe in. And so, I
Yeah.
feel like I have to vote if I'm going to do that. But I
hmm
do look at who the people are and how they show up, how they behave before I make a decision. So will I vote NDP in the next election? I don't know,
hmm
because I have to look at the people, right?
Yeah, and things evolve, people evolve, viewpoints evolve. You're just thinking about the two parties here, like how they've evolved over the years, and where we are now. So,
Mm.
and depending on where you live in the country, America's huge. So, and that's why we have states, and that's why we have state legislatures, and that's why we have like independent counties and stuff like
Mm.
that, because where I live, the rules and regulations here, if they started to legislate like they do in New York City, that wouldn't work here. It
Mhm.
just wouldn't work here. Or in Kansas, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So we need to have that ability to be on that local level. But look at how that setup is, right? It's the federal government, and then it's smaller branches of government, forms of government, not one size fits all, because it won't ever. And that's why we have to like learn to govern ourselves too, right? And stop
And
looking
that's really
to
what
the
it comes
outside.
down to. Okay, the government is going to take care of certain things. We need to have that if we're going to live
Right.
together.
Right.
But how we govern ourselves is more important than what they're doing. Because if we're governing ourselves in such a way that we are being responsible, that we're thinking of the collective, that we're looking after ourselves, then it doesn't really matter what they do,
hmm hmm
because we're all working together, and that energy ripples out.
Yeah.
That energy ripples out. I saw
Yeah.
some messages here just quickly about Alberta.
Sure.
Yes, it depends on where you live. I feel like I have that freedom to say what I want to say too. But in Peru, you don't, for sure. In several
Right.
places, you don't. And that lots of places in the world.
hmm
And wonderful, Deborah, that is like me. And I don't pay attention to media. I just go to the sources. And
hmm
she also, I support NDP. In Alberta, I vote for the party that's going to keep the conservatives out. And I agree
LOL,
with that as
LOL.
well.
Yeah.
Um, that's a whole other thing. And what they say in Alberta, Deborah, we have to be strategic and vote to keep a party out. It's a little different. Yeah, we don't have like the equality of
hmm
just two.
Yeah.
So we kind of have three and one. So it's kind of like, do we gather behind the one to try and take
We had that one election year with Ross Perot, and that really threw a wrench in the works. And um, yeah, it's interesting because then there is this strategy. Well, if I vote for him, it's going to split the votes between these two, da, 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 and then what could possibly happen?
And
Yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah,
that here.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because Dave, my husband, says like, we need to have more than a two-party system. I'm like, well, what do you propose? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah, it gets messy because it's like, do you actually vote for the person you want, or do you vote for the person who's going to stop the person you don't want? Right. And that's what we end up doing. Not really
Yeah.
voting for who we want, but voting for the person who's going to go against the person we don't want.
Yep. Yeah.
So it is a very messy system that we have.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a better system, but
Hmm.
again, coming back to how we govern ourselves would make all the difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
If we're all governing ourselves in that way, that we're thinking about the collective while being kind to ourselves as well, then that really makes a difference to, you know, how powerful the government is,
Yeah.
right? The power is the people.
Yes.
I mean, they use that as a slogan, but it means nothing
Right. What
unless we
does it mean?
actually take that power. We have to
Right.
have that power, hold that power, and
And
collect.
here it is again. It comes down to that self-empowerment, right? We were raised to care more about the other person than to care for ourselves, right? It feels weird, when you stand up for yourself and say like, no, like that behavior that you just displayed to me is I can't accept that. It's when it's really interesting because I got a couple of things spinning in my head right now. That's why I'm kind of like stuttering. But when you stand up a lot of times and say something that is, there's right and there's wrong, right? There's right and there's wrong. And like this kind of what you're saying, in a society, we need to have things that we all call right and things that we call wrong. When you're asking someone to stop doing that wrong thing and do the right thing, you get backlash from that person. Like, how dare you tell me what I can and cannot do? It's like you're hurting another person. I have every right to say that. And, calling it out, that's that stand, right? And yeah, I could say a lot about that. Like just a lot. It's the making someone else wrong that for the right thing,
Mhm.
that makes us keep our mouths shut because we have this programming we have to be liked. Going back to being a good girl, good little girl and a good little boy, what we're supposed to do to be able to be that way. And you know what? I think deep down we all know what's right and what's wrong. We're just choosing not to be that way.
Yeah. And for so many reasons, right? And
Hmm.
those of us those of us who do choose, it comes down to that, the survival instinct of, I'm going to be kicked out of the tribe if I don't behave a certain way and go along with what's happening, even if I know it's wrong,
Hmm.
if I don't go along with what's happening. And so overcoming that is a whole other thing on top of what's acceptable in our society is not necessarily what's right, right? What's acceptable in our society, I mean, we just have to look at politics to see that, but anywhere
Hmm.
you can see it. You look at our media, you look like anywhere, and you'll see that what is acceptable is not necessarily right.
Hmm.
So again, coming back to governing of self,
Yeah.
right? And what are you doing to move the world into that place that you want to live? Like, what is the
Hmm.
world you want to live in, and how are you contributing to that?
Hmm. Yeah, it comes back down to self, right? It just does. We are like, as you're speaking, I'm just kind of marveling at like we are in such an amazing transitional time. We are, because we're waking up to our power, a lot of us, right? In a spiritual sense and understanding like who we really are and how the world that we all grew up in doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And so, of course, it has to change. And so, there is going to be the tearing of that, because we do live in a world of polarities. At the same time, that's a belief, right? We live in a world of polarities. There are opposites, but within that, there's a lot of gray,
Mhm.
right? So, it's very interesting is all I can really say about it all.
Yeah. And we're not going to solve all the world's problems. However, I
Mhm.
will just put out there, think,
Yeah.
actually don't think. I want you to feel before you do something.
Hmm.
Thinking is what gets us in trouble.
Yep.
Feel before
Come
you do.
to the heart.
If
Yeah.
you're triggered by something, stop and ask yourself why. Why am I triggered? Really feel into that. Why am I triggered by this? And before you respond, allow yourself to feel into what would be a response that would be in the best interest of myself and how I want the world to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then decide if you need to respond.
Yeah. What would it
Sometimes you
look
do.
Yeah, what would it look like? It's so funny because this has kind of been dancing around up here as we've been talking for the last like 20 minutes. And it's like, what would it look like as artists that we are, creatives, artists, whatever it is that we do, whether we're writing or making pictures, images, or whatever, if we were on, and you could do this anyway, right? You could do one, like really feel in to the vision you have for all of us, how we want to live in the world, how you see it and the world you want to create and be a part of, right? What if you were to put that into some sort of image or write about it in some way and put that out into someplace social, or take what you're seeing in social media and how, turn it off. How does it make me feel? And then write something or draw something from that place of how it makes you feel and either put that out there or like just experiment with it. So we're shifting, basically what we'd be doing is shifting a conversation from my guy versus this guy and this fear versus that fear. And I'm angry about this and you shouldn't be doing that. Like instead of telling each other what we're supposed to be doing, that we go from a place of heart and going inward and then sharing that out in the world. And those are just suggestions that were on the top of my head. But like, what can you think of that you can do to enrich and put better energy out there in the world, in the collective of
Yes.
Instagram,
I love that.
TikTok, Facebook.
I love that idea of, express it in creation, whatever that is for you, and share that, right? Share that. And
Mhm,
this is actually scrolled past where I have to scroll that up now
mhm.
to catch all of these.
You guys
Um,
are awesome.
Tell your husband not like us. I can't remember what we were talking about there. I think,
The three-party system or
oh,
changing
right,
the
right.
system. Yeah.
And then I think the US is better than us. Well, we're all governed ourselves. We would probably get better politicians. Absolutely. Governing ourselves is ideal. Charlotte said, yes, Deborah, we need to care for ourselves first and then for others. I believe in that too. Yes, for sure. Until you are in your 70s and you don't care whether or not you're in the tribe, we need to be like that younger. It's
Yeah.
true. It's
Yep.
true. Um,
Absolutely.
we're in a transitional time.
Hmm.
I woke up to my power not only spiritually but also in my mind. And look at the whole world. It is definitely a transitional year. It's exciting, actually.
Hmm.
Iona,
Hmm.
wrong and right as polarity consciousness. Yes. And
Hmm.
perfectly stated, Larissa. Thank you. Oh, I think that's when I went on my little rant there. And
Yep.
I think it needs to be a combination feel and think, look and pay attention, be in the moment and really listen. Yes. This has been helpful. I needed to hear a non-confrontational conversation. Oh, I'm so glad. So glad.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. This is us putting out what we want to see in the world.
Yes, this is exactly it.
Yeah.
And then creative expression is good medicine. And yeah, and thank you everyone for the comments and being a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna wrap up and we try
Yeah.
to stick
Wow.
to, I know we probably could go for another hour, but we do really try to stick to that. So time, but we probably could go on and on. So maybe this topic will come back again. If there's
Mhm.
something you want to explore, we definitely have great conversations that then spark other things. So we don't need input, but if you do have something, we would gladly explore it here and share with you. We were a little off. I think every summer we're a little bit off with our dates and we miss a month usually. But we're back now, I think regularly. every
Yeah.
third Monday. I think we've got it figured out for the next little while. So
Yep. Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
do
And I'm
that.
excited where we're going as a group. You guys were awesome, jumping in and chiming in and sharing your hearts and wisdom
Yeah, I love
along with us. And yeah, I really feel like a collective today.
that.
Very, and a very powerful one at that. And yeah, if you guys are so inspired too, share this video with your friends. Let them, they'll be kind of off the topic a little bit, off the energy a little bit, but or timing. And but you can always reach out and share
Mhm.
um your thoughts and feelings, just like Larissa said. And yeah, if it's compelling, we'll definitely we chat every week. So,
Mhm.
whatever you guys send to us, we're going to be chatting about anyway. So
Yeah.
so
So
be
yeah,
nice.
send it to us, put it in the comments. Let us know. Uh, we love these conversations,
Mhm.
and like we do, we get together every week and chat because we love these conversations, and so sharing them here with you is part of that, how we want to show up in the world, right? How we
Mhm.
want to show up in the world. Any final thoughts, Deb, before we go?
No, the only thing that just popped in is leaving you with a final question of like, if just what's blocking me from creating the world I want to live in? What's blocking me from visioning it? What's blocking me from, creating any art or writing from that? What's blocking me from dreaming it? Just sit with it and see what are some of the things. And if you want to share, please share.
Mhm.
That might be
Love
another
that.
next great topic is, yeah, what are we doing?
Well, and there was
But
some points that we wanted to make today that we didn't, or not points, but some things we wanted to talk about that we didn't. So we might be back on the same topic. Who knows?
yeah, well, who knows what the landscape will be like the next time we come live.
A month from now, it's true.
I'm
So
visioning peace and harmony.
put energy into that. So
Yeah.
thank you everyone for being with us here today. We really appreciate it. And we love hearing from you and we love having you part of our conversation.